everybody. Welcome on in. Episode 137 of the Talking Friars podcast and YouTube show. We got some exciting news today. I was not planning on going live right now and recording this episode at 9:16 a.m. Pacific time, but we have a trade that has happened. The San Diego Padres acquire Matt Beaty, an outfielder, a first baseman, has played also some third base, I think, in his career. They acquire him from the Los Angeles Dodgers. In return, the Dodgers get right-handed pitching prospect River Ryan. A.J. Preller announced today. To make room on the 40-man roster, the Padres placed left-handed pitcher Drew Pomerantz on the 60-day injured list, which is kind of expected. A past episode, a couple episodes ago, Kevin Acee, I talked about Kevin Acee's update that Pomerantz was not going to be on a mound until May. So that's expected that this is the move that they make, but definitely an exciting deal. Before we get into it and what my thoughts are and what anyone in the chat's thoughts are, this episode is sponsored by GAGLIONE Bros, famous cheesesteaks and subs. GAGLIONEBros.com to view their entire menu, located in Point Loma, located at Sports Arena, located at Petco Park. During the season, starting April 14th, the Padres home opener against Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, and the Atlanta Braves. So let's get right into it here. I had some notes also. We'll talk about Kevin Acee's roster projection as well. I was planning on doing that tomorrow because I work later today, but I was planning on doing the roster projection a little bit tomorrow, but since we're doing this breaking news kind of episode right now, might as well do the roster projection too. But to get into this Matt Beaty news, just to start off here. So obviously they get Matt Beaty. Dodgers get River Ryan, like I mentioned. And this was a move I wasn't expecting just because it was, in the division. But the Dodgers did DFA Matt Beaty sometime last week. And so that set up the possibility that teams had, they had 10 days to make a trade with the Dodgers to get Matt Beaty. And because the Dodgers had DFA'd him, they knew that they weren't going to get a whole lot back regardless of what team that they dealt with. And the Padres ended up taking this bargain, this chance on Matt Beaty, and we'll see where it goes. Matt Beaty, for anyone who needs some, history on him, he's 28 years old, hit .262 so far in his career, 425 OPS, 556 Major League plate appearances. He's hit 18 home runs, 91 runs driven in. He's scored about 80 runs. 6 feet tall, 215 pounds, left-handed hitter, so that kind of helps as well with the Padres lineup. And A.J. Preller, he likes his versatility, and he's getting versatility here with Matt Beaty. According to the Padres' official release that they had here, Beatty's made 45 starts at first base in his career, 64 appearances in left field, 46 starts in left. He's made 69 total appearances, by the way, at first. 45 of those were starts, like I mentioned. 22 appearances and 9 starts in right field, 14 appearances and 7 starts in third base, or at third base. So they're getting versatility here. There's questions that I can, definitely expand upon, with this acquisition in terms of where Beatty will play, what that means for guys like Eric Hosmer, because Beatty can play first base, and we'll get into that as well. But 15 postseason games so far in his postseason, in his major league career, obviously with the Dodgers, 2019 through 2021. It says here they collected 1 hit in 3 of his first 4 playoff games in the 2019 NLDS against the Nationals. He was selected by the Royals initially in the 48th round of the 2011 first-year player draft. So that's just the regular amateur draft. But didn't sign, went to Belmont University, and then was drafted a few years later by the Dodgers in 2015 in the 12th round. So he hit 270 last year, made the opening day roster for the Dodgers. So it says here that he was designated for assignment last Wednesday, March 23rd. And so the Padres ended up picking him up in this trade. Again, I don't know a whole lot about River Ryan, but it does say that he's a right-handed pitcher, and you just kind of hope that this doesn't come into one of those like max free deals or whatever, and he ends up being a superstar or something. But he's not one of the Padres' top prospects. I'd never heard of him, and I'm a big Padre fan, diehard Padre fan. I think I know a little bit about their farm system more than probably most people. I'd never heard of River Ryan before, so we'll see, who he actually is. But in terms of, obviously, you're not here for River Ryan talk. You're here for Matt Beaty talk, and just some questions that I have. I'm literally coming. I mean, this news happened. Like the MLB alert literally just popped up. And I know they're a little late on things, but it literally just happened. And so literally you're getting my really like initial reaction here. But first, let's get some reaction from the fans here. Adam says, "What's up, Ben? I like the trade, AJ Preller buying low on Matt Beaty." I think he's buying low here. Obviously, I kind of mentioned that earlier with him, Beatty being DFA'd. That means that the Dodgers gave up on him essentially, and they didn't have room for him. And so when you're literally DFAing someone, you can't go ask for top prospects back because you're not the team with the leverage. It seems kind of like the Padres had some leverage there because they were like, "Hey, Dodgers, do you want someone back? Hey, you want someone back? Here you go. We'll at least give you him. We'll at least give you River Ryan back, in this deal." But I did see a Dennis Lin tweet right before I came on. Where is it? There it is. This is the Padres, according to Dennis Lin, this is the Padres' first trade with the Dodgers since that Yasmani Grandal and Zach Eflin trade, Matt Kemp coming to the Padres. Obviously, that worked out really well for the Dodgers and didn't work out for the Padres. And so hopefully it's the Padres' turn for a deal like this to work out, a Padres-Dodgers deal. Obviously, that was a while back that they made that Yasmani Grandal, Zach Eflin, Matt Kemp deal. And Matt Kemp ended up being traded to the Braves, a couple years later, and Grandal ended up, being the starting catcher there and being in the playoffs. And Zach Eflin's now one of the Phillies' best starting pitchers, so that deal did not work out great for the Padres. And, years after that Yasmani Grandal deal, they end up having Austin Hedges catching and Francisco Mejia catching and, a lot of different fill-ins. And now they have Austin Nola, maybe they would have still had Yasmani Grandal if they didn't make that deal being the starting catcher. And instead, they had to trade Ty France and Taylor Trammell and Andres Munoz so that they could get back Austin Nola. And Austin Nola hasn't stayed healthy. And now, Luis Camposano, maybe they trade him. Maybe they keep him. Who knows? They just had to make a trade for Jorge Alfaro to give them another catcher. So that deal really didn't work out. And then there was a lot of different after, effects that hasn't worked really great for the Padres in their favor. But again, like I mentioned, hopefully this deal does work out for the Padres. River Ryan, a 2021 11th round pick. Beatty has a career 779 OPS against righties. Dennis says he can play either at corner outfield position. That seems like the role that I would think he's going to be in. Adam says in the comments here, Matt Beaty didn't get enough playing time in the outfield with the Dodgers because of how stacked it is. Good for Beatty. That's what it seems like, and I agree with you, Adam. It seems like Matt Beaty, it was one of those where you have A.J. Pollock, you have Mookie Betts, right? You have Cody Bellinger, you have Chris Taylor. At some point, you want to get something back for him. What are you really going to have Matt Beaty on the roster for if he's not going to get playing time? So I think the Padres can benefit and give him, a greater role with the Padres, and hopefully he, has this kind of like revenge tour on the Dodgers and says, "You shouldn't have given up on me. Here you go. I'm going to go beat you now." Yeah. So hopefully that's what happens. Let's see. Alex Silva says in the comments, if Beatty can get playing time, he can hit 20 home runs. I think so. He hit 20. I think he hit 20 home runs last year. But we will go through the splits. And the big question for me after this is he the starting left fielder, or is it a platoon with Profar? Is Mazar the fifth outfielder? Because it definitely seems like Beatty would be at least the fourth outfielder. That's what I would do, just first glance. But I know it does take time for players to adjust to their new team and all of that. But we'll definitely see what his role is. And let me just check Twitter real quick just to see some any tweets coming in here from Padres beat writers or anything. The Dodgers have made it official. Dodgers trade infielder, outfielder Matt Beaty to San Diego in exchange for minor league infielder River Ryan. So is this like, it seems like a Jake Cronenworth situation with River Ryan, where River Ryan is an infielder and a pitcher? Because the Dodgers are listing Ryan in this release that they have as an infielder, where the Padres are listing him as a right-handed pitcher. And the stats I looked up right before the show, it seemed like those were batting stats. So it seemed like they had his infield stats. So who knows? This is not Beatty related, but AJ Cassaville just said, Luis Garcia, righty reliever Luis Garcia, dealing with a side issue, hasn't thrown off a mound since his first Cactus League outing, likely going to open the season on the IL, but Cassaville saying he's watching him play catch as he types it, so it doesn't seem like a long-term thing. So that would probably open the door for Ryan Weathers to definitely make the roster, or maybe Steven Wilson or Nabil Chrismat to be on the roster in place of Luis Garcia. Again, they do have that 28-man roster, not 26. And we'll get into that with AC's roster projection after, really getting into this Matt Beaty discussion here. Bob Melvin has commented on Matt Beaty saying, quote, he's a professional at bat. He's got a high on base percentage, the kind of guy that takes a lot of pitches. Could see him as a pinch hitter potentially, can play a little outfield, a little first base, so he's got some versatility there. So it seems like, based on what Bob Melvin initially just said there, saying that could see him as a pinch hitter potentially, maybe that you would think that Profar is still the left fielder and that Beatty is going to be the fourth outfielder. That's what it seems like there. And with the versatility, that's my question here. My question, I know he's not a huge power bat like Profar as well, but my question is, now that Beatty has that they have more versatility with Beatty, he can play first. And so if Hosmer's not hot at the plate and a lefty's on the mound, I know Beatty's a lefty. And against lefties in his career, he has a 596 OPS. I'm not sure what Hosmer's is right off the top of my head, but would they go with Beatty there? I don't know if he's a better defensive first baseman than Hosmer, but I would guess. I mean, Hosmer just has not been great at all defensively in a Padre uniform in the regular season in his 4 years here. So would they put him at first and really emphasize health with Voit and just keep him literally as the DH the whole year? Maybe that happens. But I know Hosmer and Beatty are both left-handed hitters. So a platoon isn't likely there because a platoon involves left and right-handed hitters usually. So we'll see with that. Kevin AC said, it seems like this is a Bob Melvin quote. Quote, we know we like the profile of the bat. So a much-needed left-handed hitter, guy who can play some outfield, and definitely, from the division rival, knows the Dodgers, probably knows how to attack some of those hitters. Probably has been some conversations with the pitchers over there, and that might be able to help the Padres as well. Nando 390 here says Beatty is trash. I don't really agree with that. I think it's more of maybe you're just looking at his stats and you're not really looking at a situation that he had. His situation was he wasn't a starting outfielder because he had an MVP, a couple former MVPs, and an all-star in that outfield. He has Chris Taylor, the ultimate utility guy, probably the best utility man in baseball, as the fourth outfielder, essentially. So he's not going to get a whole lot of playing time there. So I think this is a chance for him to flourish with the Padres. And I like this move. Again, it's not Nick Castellanos or Chris Bryant or someone like that. But at the same time, this is a good depth move, I think. I think you'll see him get some starts. And Jurickson Profar switch hits, so he can hit lefty as well. So gut reaction, my answer down on the ticker, is he the starting left fielder now? My gut reaction based on that Bob Melvin comment and Jurickson Profar, can switch hit, I would think that he's not. I would think that Beatty is the fourth outfielder ahead of Nomar Mazara. But at least right now, the Padres have 5 outfielders now. If you have Profar as the left fielder, with Myers in right, Grisham in center, Profar in left, Beatty fourth outfielder, Mazara fifth outfielder. It looks like they have 5 outfielders now when they only had 4. Now, you would hope that Beatty has more power, in left field. If he does play some left field or if he gets more at bats. If an injury happens, obviously you don't want that to happen, but if that does happen. But to me, it just seems like if he gets more consistent at bats, the Padres believe that he can really be an impact player for them, in the outfield. That's my thinking, just reading these immediate comments from Bob Melvin and just the Padre beat writers that I'm, looking at here. Let's see. So in terms of comparing Profar and Matt Beaty, they're platoon splits because I know Profar's a switch hitter, but I just wanted to look at the platoons, the career platoon splits for Matt Beaty and Jurickson Profar, and I'll share my screen here for the YouTube audience. Matt Beaty, let's see here. Okay. In his career, Matt Beaty against right-handed pitchers, 221 games, hitting 267, 339 on base, 440 slugging, 779 OPS. Against lefties, hitting 224, 286 on base, 310 slugging, 596 OPS. So he hits better against righties. Then you move over to Jurickson Profar. In his career, against right-handed pitchers, he has 235 batting average, 322 on base, 395 slugging, 717 OPS. And against lefties, 239 average, 314 on base, 357 slugging percentage, 671 OPS. So what I take from here, in terms of, I'm a big OPS guy because that really combines the guy's full kind of hitting, his ability to get on base, and when he does get on base through hits, how many of those are extra bases. And Beatty does not hit as well against lefties as Profar does in terms of OPS in their career, but against righties, he has a higher OPS in his career against Profar in comparison to Profar. So maybe you could see against righties, Beatty gets some at-bats, and against lefties, Profar, is the left fielder. I still think that Profar is the starting left fielder, just especially like I just mentioned, looking at the comments that Bob Melvin just made. And I know that those can change and all of that, but those are my initial thoughts on if Matt Beatty's addition changes who the starting left fielder is. So give me your thoughts in the chat. Love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this addition? Do you think Beatty should start? Are there aspects of this that I'm not really looking at? Just going through the comments here. Johnny Cage comments, what's the reports on that pitcher, River Ryan? So that's interesting. I touched on that earlier. I don't know what the reports are because there's really conflicting reports. The Padres had him as a pitcher. The Dodgers had him as an infielder. So is this a Jake Cronenworth situation where he can pitch and play infield, and they're going to try to use him that way? or they're going to convert him to an infielder, or are they going to use him as a pitcher? I don't know. The Dodgers list him as an infielder, so you'd think that they're going to use him as a position player. But the Padres, it's weird for the Padres to list him as a pitcher. So I'm not too sure if they were even on the same page of what River Ryan was, or if this was literally the best deal that the Dodgers got. Because, again, they DFA'd Beatty, so they were just trying to get something back for him. And they were like, I don't care what you think of him as. We think of him as something else. We're just going to make this deal and, move on here and hope that Beatty doesn't come and, beat us. But I really hope that Beatty uses this. This is like a big motivational thing, and he really ends up whooping the Dodgers' butts, this season for the Padres. Let's look up Matt Beaty's contract situation. He is 28 years old. Let's see here. I know he was DFA'd, so that might be hard to find his contract details. All right, I have an article here that said from yesterday that the Dodgers renewed Matt Beaty's contract, him and Andrew Tolles, minimum league salary. Okay, so it's $700,000 is what it looks like is Matt Beaty's deal, his contract. And he's played, let's go back here to see how many years he's played in the big leagues. I think 3. Yeah, 3. So I think he has 3 more years left on his deal, right? That's what I would imagine. Played 3 years, 3 parts of 3 seasons, and then 3 more years left before free agency. I guess that's what I would think is his contract situation. He had a .3 WAR according to Baseball Reference, .3 WAR in 19, negative .5 WAR in 2020, .1 WAR in 2021. But again, he didn't get as many at-bats. He wasn't a firm starter with the Dodgers because they're loaded. So I'm a believer that he's going to get some more opportunities with the Padres, and I think you could see him have better numbers with the Padres with more at-bats. Because he did have some good moments with the Dodgers. It doesn't seem like, to me at least, that he really struggled with velocity. So I don't think it's as much of a Ha-Seong Kim situation where they want him more at-bats to, so he can get some velocity, deal with velocity, get more experience with velocity. I just think just get him more at-bats. I'm not really seeing anything here. Any other additional tweets here? Let's try to look at some Dodger fans' thoughts on this. Matt Beaty just tweeted, "Thank you, Dodger fans," on his Instagram. Okay, wow. All right, here is Matt Beaty's Instagram for the YouTube audience. And then I'll read the message that he has for the podcast audience. This is from Matt Beaty's Instagram. He's playing a little highlight video of some of his Dodger highlights. And look, there's a home run against Kyle Hendricks that he's showing. He does have some power. 2015 was the beginning of this journey in professional baseball. This is Matt Beaty's words from his Instagram 31 minutes ago. Dodgers gave me the opportunity to make my childhood dreams a reality. Through many games through the system, Midland, Rancho, Tulsa, and Oklahoma City, I had some of my best memories with some of my closest friends. Then in 2019, my dreams became a reality. The team, the staff, and the fans all took me in with open arms. I can't be thankful enough for that. From all the walk-offs, 106 wins in 2019 and 2021, and winning the World Series in 2020. Dodgers fans, you made playing games in LA fun and filling up the seats to make road games feel like home games. Forever thankful to this organization and couldn't be more proud to put on that Dodger blue. Never once took that for granted. So seemed, he really thankful for his time with the Dodgers. And I'm excited to see him play with the Padres and see him, I think he'll get some type of more playing time. Just looking more at Dodger fans' reaction on Twitter here. One says, a little sad to see one of ours go, but he'll likely have more opportunities to play, so maybe it's better for him. That's my thought process here. Another one, I'm happy for him. Didn't get his fair shake in LA. There was a Dodger fan, by the way. This is kind of funny. A Dodger fan is now going to have, let me look this up. A Dodger fan is now going to have Matt Beaty's tattoo on his body as a Dodger fan, and he's going to see him playing with the Padres, which I think is pretty funny. I think it was him and Bellinger. Yeah, here it is. I'll share my screen here. Here's the tattoo. This Dodger fan, he got Matt Beaty's tattoo on him. I don't know why, but there it is. So I don't know why that fan did that, but that's kind of funny. Looking at some more Dodger fan reactions. I think just because they saw him play more than I did and than most Padres fans did. Bad move. One says, good utility, better than Zach McKinstry or whatever his last name is. Let's see. He's probably going to rake this season. Wish him the best of luck. Bad part, he went to a division rival. What kind of trade was this? With an emoji. Let's see. He's going to carry a grudge. Now I really hate him. All right, so now, yeah, some saying I hate it. Yeah, so Dodger fans, it's mixed. Dodger fans, some are being a little classy, just they realized his situation, and then some are, pissed, as Jason says there. Jason says this is a steal. I think it could be, but I don't think that I still don't think he's the starting left fielder right now, though. I think he can be, but at the same time, I think right now, from Bob Melvin's comments, I think it could be a steal if he really produces off the bench. But right now, it seems like he's the fourth outfielder. So I disagree a little bit there, Jason, with you saying he's the left field starter. I know we like Profar as a utility guy, but Beatty, you got to remember, he's also kind of a utility guy as well. Johnny Cage. Let's see. Or let's go to Alex's comment first. I think that's kind of intertwined with Johnny. Alex says, I can see them getting another bat who can hit lefties and platoon them. I can see them getting two guys who hit 15 to 20 homers instead of one guy who hits 30. Well, if they get another bat, then I would think CJ Abrams doesn't make the opening day roster then, and we'll get into that with the AC projection that he came out with before this Beatty trade. If they get another outfielder, then they'd still have Beatty there listed as an outfielder. You'd think they'd have Profar there still as a utility guy, and he would probably move more to an infielder, and then Abrams wouldn't be on the roster. Now, if they got the outfielder, depending on who it is, then I think fans probably might be okay with not having Abrams to at least start. I want Abrams on the roster, but maybe if they're seeing an outfielder, they like the outfielder, he brings power to the team, something like that, then maybe they're like, okay, yeah, I'm okay with this, to start the season. AJ, kind of fixed the left field hole a little more. So then Johnny says there's a flaw to that logic. Wasn't Adam Frazier an all-star for the Pirates and was hitting over 300 and traded to San Diego, fell off a cliff? He did. You're right about that. But Adam Frazier wasn't a 15 to 20 home run guy. That's the difference there between Johnny, Adam Frazier, and what Alex is saying. Getting two guys that hit 15 to 20 home runs, so each guy hits 15 to 20 home runs. Adam Frazier didn't even do that. Mike says, very low risk, high reward deal. Nice deal for Preller. That's what it seems like right now. But again, I'm pretty sure that's what we thought with like when we gave the Dodgers Zach Eflin, and then he turns out to be a good starter for the Phillies. I know it's a different team, not the Dodgers, but that's probably what we said then. So obviously we'll see if it's a good move, but it seems like a good move right now because I don't know. I know probably fans don't know who River Ryan is. So yeah, I can understand, where Mike's coming from, and probably other Padre fans are coming from with that. Alex says, Preller just trying to get his mojo back in small trades. I think he just took advantage that the Dodgers had too many great outfielders, and so he just took them. I don't think if Beatty was on the Dodger roster and didn't get DFA'd, I don't think this move gets made. I think because he was DFA'd, he saw that the Dodgers don't have the leverage here and was like, let's go make this deal. Because if he was starting, the Dodgers could tell Preller, Andrew Friedman, their GM, could tell Preller, like, hey, we envision him to play a Chris Taylor role, an important role for us this year. But when he's DFA'd, you obviously don't think that. Mike says he's willing to bet another deal is brewing before the start of the season. I'm kind of hesitating. I don't really think that's going to happen in terms of outfield. Now, look, I said that probably last night, I think, on episode 136 when I went live. That's what I said then, that I didn't think another move was going to happen. And then wake up the next morning and a move happens. So we'll see. I was I didn't think another move was going to happen, but it ended up happening. So you're right in terms of Preller. I think you're right thinking that Preller could make another move. I think it could happen. AJ likes to make moves, and we've seen him make moves close to the season. We saw the Craig Kimbrell deal. I know that didn't work out, but when he was traded to the Padres, that was right before the season started. So he can do it, but I don't think that's going to happen. But again, like I mentioned, I didn't think it was going to happen last night or the night before, when I was talking about Profar and the roster. Heck, from what Preller was saying, I don't think he thought another move was going to happen. He was saying that he thought that this is probably the roster we were going to go with, and that ended up not being the case. All right, let's see here. Johnny asks, how is it a steal with the Dodgers turning unknown players into a solid player like Justin Turner, Chris Taylor, Max Muncy? Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there, but wasn't Matt Beaty kind of like an unknown player as well? And so I think what I would take from that is that the Padres can kind of pull the Dodgers there and take Matt Beaty, who was kind of having a small role, and make him that valuable fourth outfielder off the bench, or if an injury happens, be a good starting outfielder. I think that would be okay. I think that's what the Padres are kind of looking for here. And so all I can say is you hope that River Ryan doesn't turn into Max Fried, or a Zach Eflin, you hope, or a Corey Kluber. You hope that doesn't happen. But it seems like he's going to be an infielder with the Dodgers. So I don't know. Rome Loves Dan says on YouTube here, hope he comes to San Diego with a chip on his shoulder, not buddy-buddy with his ex-Doyers teammates. Well, we know he's going to be buddy-buddy when they play before the game and stuff, but I think he will have a chip on his shoulder. I know this isn't Padres related, but you saw Tommy Pham say that it was like going to be like a revenge tour or whatever when he on social media in like a Reds uniform on spring training. Not a revenge tour on the Padres, but like on the whole league. I was hearing something about that. So I think players that feel slighted by their old team or go to another team and that old team didn't want to give them the contract that they wanted and felt like they deserved, they have a chip on their shoulder. And I think hopefully that could be something that serves the Padres and Matt Beaty well here. Mike comments, Voit will play first against left-handed pitchers. I think he might. I know that That's probably the likeliest scenario, but maybe Matt Beaty is an option at first base against lefties if they don't want Hosmer in there. And if they really don't want to have Luke Voit in the field and they really want him to just focus on hitting and minimize injury, I don't know. But yeah, I think Voit, that's a very likely scenario that he does play I'll guarantee you this, he will play some first base against left-handed pitching. He's been playing first base in spring training. He'll play first base this year, probably against lefties. But now with the Beatty acquisition, you can question how much will he play first. If he gets to a hot start at DH, do they want to keep him at DH? I think that's a question. So it's really fascinating. Alex says here, in terms of the outfield, AJ should go get guys like Tyrone Taylor from the Brewers. They have like 5 outfielders, and he hits .298 against lefties. I put a YouTube clip out there about that with Tyrone Taylor and then possibly getting Tyrone Taylor. And I think that could be – I like that fit. I talked about that on a previous episode last week, so I'd be for that. They have Yelich. They have McCutchen in Milwaukee. They have Renfroe. They have Lorenzo Cain. So and then Tyrone Taylor as well. So they're stacked in the outfield. And it seems like a Matt Beaty situation as well, where it doesn't seem like Tyrone Taylor will really get the at-bats. And so maybe the Padres will look to benefit off of that. Who knows? I would think that trade doesn't happen because they made that Matt Beaty type move by getting Matt Beaty in terms of, trying to just capitalize on someone who wasn't getting much at-bats. Look, I think it's interesting. I just thought of this in my head too. The 2 acquisitions offensively for the Padres this year were Luke Voit this offseason, post-lockout, were Luke Voit and Matt Beaty. And guess what those 2 have in common? Matt Beaty and Luke Voit, they were on teams where they weren't going to get playing time. And so the Padres, with both of those moves, are trying to get something out of those players. And they see something in those players they think that they can get some big impact from those players. And so the Dodgers and the Yankees, in their sake with Beatty and Voit respectively, they thought, why not make this deal? He's not going to get playing time. We can get something back, and who knows if he turns into something. Justin Lang went to the Yankees, and then River Ryan to the Dodgers. Who knows if we get something out of him? If we do, good. If we don't, well, he wasn't even going to be a big significant contributor anyway. So, at least we tried. I think that's the Dodgers and Yankees point of view, and I think the Padres are just looking to capitalize off of too much depth, if that makes sense, with the Dodgers and the Yankees organizations. All right, moving on to Kevin Acey's Padres roster projection. This was before the Matt Beaty news came out. Kevin Acey, Union Tribune, came out with his first roster projection. In the rotation, he had Mike Clevenger, Yu Darvish, Nick Martinez, Joe Musgrove, and Blake Snell. He had Ryan Weathers and Chris Paddock piggybacking Blake Snell and Mike Clevenger initially. Gore in AAA. I thought, now, the order, I said Clev, Darvish, Martinez, Musgrove, Snell. That's not the order. He was doing that in alphabetical order, so that's not the order that the Padres are going to go with. But I would expect those to be the 5 starters. And I think with Luis Garcia, doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the season. That creates another spot open, and it looks like that could be Weathers' spot to come in. And he and then Paddock do, like AC said, end up piggybacking Snell and Clevenger as they're ramping up slowly. And Clevenger obviously coming off Tommy John, they want to, they don't want to rush it with him. So I could see that happening. And I think the Luis Garcia, like I just mentioned, the Luis Garcia injury, if you want to call it that, and him probably not starting the season on the roster, the 28-man roster, I think that'll help out Ryan Weathers. Gore in AAA, I think that's expected. If he pitches really well, he probably has 1 or 2 more spring training starts. If he pitches well there, I still think that he starts in the minor leagues unless an injury happens or someone really falls on their face. Just because the Nick Martinez, he's on the roster with his contract. Paddock has the big league experience already, and he's pitched pretty well in spring training. And I don't think they want to start Mackenzie Gore's service time clock. unless he's actually like really contributing and starting for the team. They don't want to play this up-down game, or same thing with CJ Abrams. They don't want to play this game where he's not starting. He's on the bench. He's not playing a significant role on the team, and he's just sitting there on the roster. It'd be better to be in the minor leagues, get more playing time there, and you don't have the service time clock starting. So I agree kind of there with the rotation. The bullpen, AC has Austin Adams, Tim Hill, Pierce Johnson, Dinelson Lamet, Paddock, obviously with the piggy back there, Weathers, Robert Suarez, Craig Stammen, Emilio Pagan, and Steven Wilson. So Luis Garcia obviously doesn't look like he's going to start, for the season. So obviously, like I mentioned, I think Weathers would take that spot. But here it seems like he already has Weathers on the roster and Steven Wilson taking Luis Garcia's spot. I was interested in that Steven Wilson pick from AC. I think I'd go Nabil Crismatt, but that's just me with the major league experience, and he pitched well last year for the Padres. Was probably one of their MVPs, their unsung heroes, if you will. So I'd be kind of interested to know more why he thinks Steven Wilson's going to be on it. Does he know stuff? Because from what I read, he didn't really elaborate on Steven Wilson. But he has Steven Wilson, the minor leaguer from El Paso, on the roster. I would go Crismatt there as that last reliever, but we'll see. That's my only kind of discrepancy, or my kind of argument there, or disagreement with AC in the bullpen. For catchers, he has Alfaro, Caratini, and Nola, with Campusano in AAA. I totally agree with that. The 28-man roster, I think they'll add that. They'll have Caratini on the roster. If an injury happens with Nola, and that's happened last year throughout the year, something happens with Alfaro, and Caratini can still catch. He's better defensively than Alfaro is. So I think they'll just have him on the roster. I discussed last night, episode 136, of some possible trade destinations. I think some fits: Diamondbacks, Marlins, Mariners. I know Diamondbacks is in the division, but in terms of just teams maybe looking for a backup catcher, I think those might be some fits for Caratini if they do trade him. And I think they are probably looking to deal him at some point. I think probably after April maybe, because with Nola catching Darvish, it seems like Darvish is, coming to the realization that, look, the Padres are just trying to win here. We're trying to win. It's time to win. We're just going to go with the best catcher, the best all-around, including offense, best catcher, all-around catcher. And so that seems like Nola. So they're catching Nola's catching Darvish. Seemed like the relationship's going well with those two so far. And so I think Nola's the starting catcher, Alfaro's the second, and then Caratini. And I agree that those three will be on the roster come opening day. Infield, he has CJ Abrams making it, Jake Cronenworth, Eric Hosmer, Ha-Seong Kim, Manny Machado. Again, this is before the Matt Beaty edition. So maybe the Matt Beaty edition doesn't have CJ on the roster. But at the same time, I think Beatty's seen more as an outfielder for the Padres, and CJ's an infielder. So, but let's say CJ makes the roster and Beatty's on the roster, then would Mazara not make it, and they still just go with four outfielders with Beatty as the fourth outfielder if they really want CJ on the roster? But then again, if they want CJ on the roster, then I would think that CJ is going to be a starting player there. He's going to start at second or short, because I don't understand why you would have CJ on the roster if he's just going to be a bench player. AC said that Abrams might get some semi-regular starts against right-handed pitching, as Abrams is a lefty, Kim's a righty, so that could happen. But I just don't see having Abrams on the roster if you're not starting him consistently. I don't understand that. So that just doesn't make sense to me. Get him more at-bats in AAA, have him playing every day in AAA if you're not going to start him every day, or close to every day. I know that Preller said that Kim's the starting shortstop, but I'm liking what I'm seeing out of CJ right now. And again, if they platoon like CJ and Kim, Kim faces lefties, CJ faces righties, maybe that's something, but I'd still rather have CJ starting every day on the major league roster, or if he's not going to do that, have him on the minor league roster. Have him in AAA. Because I think CJ's service time is going to be very, very valuable right now. I think it's going to be valuable in the future, and I think it's valuable right now because this guy's going to be a star, I think. So, again, AC has Abrams, Cronenworth, Hosmer, Kim, Machado before the Beatty deal, so we'll see if anything is affected by that. Obviously, Cronenworth, Kim, Hosmer, and Machado on the roster, but CJ is a question. In the outfield, before the Beatty deal, they had Grisham, Mazzara, Myers, Profar. AC did. Grisham in center, Mazzara, the fourth outfielder, Myers in right, Profar in left. Luke Voigt at DH has an 81 OPS, which is 23rd in Major League Baseball since the start of the 2018 season, among those with at least 1,100 plate appearances. DH, obviously, Voigt. He's consistently going to be the DH with the Beatty addition, I think. He could play first against, lefties. But we'll see if the Padres, even want to experiment with Beatty playing first against lefties. Who knows? But the outfield's expected. I would expect now with the Beatty addition for Beatty to be the fourth outfielder and Mazzara to be the fifth outfielder if Mazzara makes the roster now. Again, I think with the Beatty addition, one of them has to go, right? And I think they want three catchers. And so it comes down to what? Mazzara and CJ Abrams, right? I think that's what it would come down to. Do they want CJ on the roster? Or do they want a fifth outfielder? I'd personally rather have CJ starting games. So we'll see where that goes. But the Beatty addition does complicate some things, and it adds another question on who that final probably bench spot will be, that'll go to, or that final at least spot on the roster will go to, position player-wise, after this Matt Beaty addition. So again, rotation, Kevin AC has Clevenger, Darvish, Martinez, Musgrove, Snell, Gore in AAA, bullpen, Adams, Hill, Johnson, Lamet, Paddock, Pagan, Stammen, Suarez, Weathers, Steven Wilson. Catchers, Alfaro, Caratini, and Nola. Infield, C.J. Abrams, Jake Cronenworth, Eric Hosmer, Hassan Kim, Manny Machado. Outfield, Trent Grisham, Nomar Mazzara, Will Myers, Jurickson Profar, and then DH Luke Voigt. Those are your 28 guys that AC has. But again, I'm sure that will definitely change now with the Matt Beaty addition, and I would think Matt Beaty's the fourth outfielder. So that's the projection. I'll go through the comments here, see any more questions you guys have off of that projection. Alex Silva asks on YouTube, with the Matt Beaty trade, he got to be trying to get rid of those catchers. Well, Beaty doesn't really play catcher, but I see where you're getting from there, right? You add one roster guy, and now you got to get rid of one. But I think for April, yes, to answer your question, Alex, yes, I think they are going to trade one of those catchers at some point this season. Who is it? Who knows? That's the question. But in terms of the 28-man roster just going into April 7th on opening day, I still think they go with the three catchers, and probably like Mazzara or CJ ends up not making the roster. That's my gut instinct, because I think they want to have as many pitchers as they can and use those, at least one of those two extra spots on a pitcher. But that's just my point of view. I'm not Bob Melvin, obviously, but that's a good question. Rome loves Dan, telling Johnny Cage exactly, if he was half the player he was before, the Padres may have kept him, or he would have received more offers elsewhere. And he's referring to Tommy Pham. Yeah, that Tommy Pham conversation obviously goes to the Reds for $7.5 million, mutual option for 2023. The Padres weren't going to pay that. I don't think if he was half the player he was before, I think you're saying if he was half the player he was in Tampa, the Padres may have kept him. I disagree if it was at $7.5 million. They weren't going to do $7.5 million. They're going to stay under the number. They were comfortable making this Matt Beaty move because he's only going to make $700,000. Because according to that Dodgers site I was looking at earlier, they the Dodgers gave him a major league minimum deal this year, so $700,000. So that keeps them under that $230 million luxury tax threshold number. So they were fine making that move. Adam asks, can you see Caratini getting traded to a team like the Rays? The Rays, I mentioned on last night's episode 136, I mentioned that the Rays, they have Mike Zunino as their starting catcher, and they're pretty good there. As a backup, they have Francisco Mejia, I think. And obviously, we know Mejia didn't really turn out great with the Padres, but I still don't think they don't want to give up on him yet. I think it could be a fit. But I don't know, just gut instinct. I think they really do like Mike Zunino as the starter, and he starts the majority of games, if I remember correctly, with Tampa. And then Francisco Mejia, I would expect they're just working with him defensively and trying to help him out defensively. So I'd say this. I had Arizona, Miami, Seattle as my three, like one of my three fits yesterday for Caratini in a possible deal. I think if I had to pick a fourth, Tampa would probably be that team as that fit. So he could, be dealt. But I think the Rays are also trying to contend, and Meadows is a starter for them. So I don't think that deal happens, especially before the season. I think the Rays really want to see where they're at in that competitive AL East, maybe before the deadline if things aren't working out. But so I think that's more of a wait and see on that. But again, what do I know, right? Like yesterday, I was thinking that Profar was going to be the starting left fielder, and I think he still will be, but I was thinking that they weren't going to make any more moves in the outfield, and, this morning they acquire Matt Beaty, so who knows? All right, this has been a fun episode, a reaction episode brought to you by GAGLIONE Bros, famous cheesesteaks and subs, located in Point Loma Sports Arena, Petco Park. Padres acquire Matt Beaty from the Los Angeles Dodgers. If you're watching on replay on YouTube, I really appreciate it. Watching live here, hit that subscribe button to get those numbers up. I hope you appreciate me coming on live right after this deal happened, giving you my reaction. Sorry, I'm jumbling words right now. Hoping that you appreciate the content, and I'll be back probably tomorrow for another episode. I really appreciate your time. Again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anyone listening on the podcast, I appreciate it. Hit the notification button on YouTube. Again, we're on TikTok at Talking Friars, Twitter Talking Friars, and as well on Instagram at Talking Friars. Ben Fadden signing off. Until next time, everyone, stay safe. Go Padres.